Hi everybody and welcome to the Hygge at Home podcast. Today we're talking about a fascinating topic, why Hygge might be more of an inside job than we realise. During the last two episodes we've been talking about creating that perfect, cosy, Hygge-inspired home, the kind of space where you'd expect to instantly feel warm and happy. And my guests, Isabel Starr and Cher Casey, gave us some fantastic hints and tips about how to create this. But how many of us have had those moments where we've splurged on the most beautiful sofa, the fluffiest blanket, the comfiest cushions, or the creamiest hot chocolate? Everything that's supposed to make us feel happy, yet we're left feeling just a little bit deflated still. So what's going on here? Well, without getting too deep into the science, it all comes down to the little chemical messengers in our bodies called neurotransmitters, which play a major role in how we feel. To help us answer this question, my guest today is Tina Hancocks. Tina is the founder of Tina Hancocks Nutrition. She is a naturopathic nutritionist and nutritional therapist and a qualified nutrigenomics practitioner. She works clinically and therapeutically with clients using the latest nutrition science, functional as well as genetic testing to dig down and find the root cause of symptoms, treating the whole person and bringing the body back into balance by harnessing the healing powers of whole food and targeted supplementation. Tina has a specialist interest in genetics and autoimmune conditions and is known for simplifying complex nutrition science and empowering clients with the knowledge and tools to optimize their health. So welcome, Tina. It's really great to have you here today. Thank you for joining me.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
So Tina, can you start by explaining what you mean when you say Hygge is an inside job?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one because a little bit like you alluded to in your introduction, we tend to think about Hygge as something that we see in this lovely aesthetics and these environments, but ultimately how we feel is governed so much by these little messages inside our body. So those happiness, contentment, that joy and pleasure sensations, which are serotonin and dopamine. And if we don't have them operating efficiently within ourselves, how can we ever feel that?
So you mentioned two key neurotransmitters, the serotonin and dopamine. Can you break down their roles and how they actually relate to our sense of that contentment and the coziness?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So these guys, now I think of serotonin as a lady, so I'm going to refer to her as her here. Okay. So serotonin is your happiness and contentment chemical. So she is all about feeling you've got enough, that you're relaxed, the contentment, that sense of homecoming and coziness. And believe it or not, she even helps reduce pain. In many ways, I think of serotonin really as the essence of Hygge, because it's that real sort of feeling of, okay, I'm here, all is good. And then on the flip side, we've got dopamine. So dopamine, I'm sure you've heard about dopamine hits. So dopamine is all about that sort of rush of pleasure, that motivation. It's that sense of wanting more and more and more, that craving. It's about forward motion, reward, that feeling of not enough. It's the sensations that social media and the commercial industries today just love to exploit by telling us that we need more and more and more of whatever that thing is, Yeah. Essentially, they're two sides of the same coin, though. Dopamine is very much the yang to serotonin's yin, and a little bit like, say, the Hulk and Bruce Banner, if you're an Avengers fan. You never see them together, really. So you'll have serotonin, which is long-lasting, that's happiness, at the expense of the fleeting, momentary pleasure and hits that are the dopamine. So it's kind of one or the other.
So dopamine is kind of like just your quick fixes then, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the thing, we need some of it. It's what kind of gets us up. It's what gets us moving and motivates us to kind of go and do the things. Yeah. But ultimately, we can then be seeking more and more and more. Whereas the serotonin is what is much more of the sort of relaxed sense of, yeah, this is all good. I'm really happy. I've got enough, and I'm kind of where I want to be.
Yeah, oh great. That's really interesting. I never actually knew, obviously I knew the words but didn't know the difference between them. But you are right, we hear of dopamine a lot, especially across social media, and it's just those quick fixes, isn't it, those dopamine hits. So that's really interesting, thank you for that. So let's talk about diet. What are some key nutrients that we need to support the production of serotonin?
Yeah, it's a great question, because ultimately, if we don't put the right ingredients in, we can't make these chemicals, because they don't come from nowhere. So our body has to make them, and it needs the raw ingredients. So I kind of say, if I use the analogy of the bake-off, so we're going to use our kind of get the right ingredients that we need here. So the base one is going to be protein. Okay, so that is and essentially the tiny building blocks within proteins, which are things called amino acids, and we need a particular one called tryptophan. So that's what we make serotonin from, and we find that in things like turkey or chicken and fish, oats, and also sunflower seeds is another good source for that. And then you need some B vitamins. So we need a sprinkle here of things like vitamin B3, B6, B9, B12. And we get those in things like leafy green vegetables, whole grains, again, nuts and seeds, eggs, liver can be a great source as well. Magnesium is another essential one. And this is something that most people tend to be deficient in, unfortunately, because when you hear where you find it, which is mainly leafy green vegetables and whole grains, there's not a lot of that in the Western diet. So. And it's also something that's quite deficient in our soils today. So that's really essential. And it's got a myriad of roles within the body. It's not just in our happiness hormones. So zinc is another key one. So anyone that loves oysters is going to be in their element, because oysters are one of the foods that's highest in zinc. Crab is another good one. Seafoods generally have quite a lot of zinc. Pumpkin seeds and sunflower seeds can be some other good sources there too. Then we need a little bit of iron. So iron is generally found in meat, but if you're vegetarian or vegan, you need to be looking at things like lentils. Dried apricots is another good source, and also for any veggies and vegans out there, good tip for you: big squeeze of lemon juice over your veggies. So if you're having things like spinach or foods rich in iron, put that on and it will boost as much iron as you can get out of that meal. And then lastly, we need a bit of vitamin D and some omega-3s as well. So vitamin D we get from the sun, and we make it in our body. Now, if you live in the UK and you look out the window, you might be thinking, oh, yeah, that's a bit tricky at times.
Tricky for us, definitely. Especially the start of summer, which was non-existent.
Yeah. So vitamin D in the UK, we can't make it in the UK between about October and March. So through the winter months, the sun isn't at the right angle, and the NHS does even recommend that you supplement that through the winter. So that's really important. But during the summer months, we can make it if we are exposed safely. We expose our skin to the sun. And then the last one there is omega-3, which isn't so much an ingredient for making the serotonin as much as it is about getting the oven at the right temperature. So it creates the perfect environment to actually maximise the amount of serotonin we make. And omega-3 is something called an essential fatty acid, which it's essential because we can't make it in our bodies. We have to get it through our food.
Okay.
And we can find that in things like oily fish. So that's in your things like wild salmon, mackerel, sardines are really good sources of that. And other sort of vegan or vegetarian options would be things like your chia seeds or flax seeds, but they're in much lower levels. So definitely something for people that don't eat fish to be looking at and thinking about, because that's super important. But it's also, I would add, all those lovely ingredients that are amazing and all those lovely whole foods that we're getting, it's really important that we can also actually absorb those nutrients. So something to think about if people have got a few digestive issues. It's not just about what you eat, we are what we absorb. So if, for example, somebody feels that they're suffering with a bit of bloating or discomfort after eating, that is a bit of a telltale sign that maybe their digestive system isn't working quite as well as it could be and needs a bit of TLC, so it might be worth thinking about that.
Yeah, and I've just remembered, actually, just going off track a little bit, but this is actually the first thing that we spoke about when we met. Because when I met you and I realised, what you do, I think I told you about the sensitivity check that I'd done, and it came back with just a myriad of things, whether it was right or wrong, I don't know, but it really got me thinking, actually, this bloatedness that I feel constantly isn't just, it's part of being a woman. You know, I hear so many people saying, I feel bloated constantly, that's just being a woman. No, it doesn't have to be like that. It was at the point where I realised the things that I was eating were affecting me in some way, or, you know, weren't correct, or something was going on, and I started to think about my diet, and I started to think about the things I was eating, and looking after myself, that there were certain things that I was either lacking in, or that I was eating, that was making me feel that way. And when I took them out of my diet, for me it was actually dairy, I felt like a different person. The bloatedness has gone. I can tell when I have had some dairy, because it comes back again. And I know it's not like that for everybody, but I'd gone so long thinking this was just life, you know, I'm just going to be bloated and feel uncomfortable, which, like you said, in turn did affect the serotonin. It affected my mood, my daily life, and I feel like a different person now. And yeah, I say it just reminded me that's how we started talking about this, didn't we? And you'd be great to come onto the podcast to talk about it. So thank you for that. That's such a great list of the balanced diet and what we should be, you know, striving to eat too. So I'll make sure I put all of that together as a little information pack to go alongside the podcast and on the blog and the YouTube video too. So beyond diet, what other lifestyle factors can influence our serotonin levels?
Yeah, well, absolutely. There's loads of things. So there's no one silver bullet here. It's the full spectrum approach, really. So diet is super important, because we've got to be putting in all those raw ingredients. But equally, we've got to, as I said, we've got to put the oven at the right temperature to actually make as much serotonin as we can. So it's about what we do in our lifestyle there. And one of the key things that is going to burn up all your ingredients more than anything else, funnily enough, is stress. So not a big surprise there, and this is pervasive in today's society, but it is one of the biggest thieves of our happiness and contentment chemicals, and it's directly driven by the opposing side of that coin, which is our quick reward, pleasure-seeking friend, dopamine. And that dopamine actually drives the production of adrenaline and noradrenaline in our bodies. So also getting enough sunlight is another thing we can do to support producing serotonin, and that's particularly in the morning. So that I would say the first hour, really, it shows in the science, after waking is super important for just regulating all our natural circadian rhythms. So getting outside, getting natural sunlight into your eyes, and that will sort of set you up for the day. It's going to make your sleep better in the evening, and it's also going to really enhance all those mood producing chemicals. So that's really important. Another one, no surprises here, exercise. And this is all about exercising moderately. So while that really intense spin class that gets you sweating buckets might be brilliant and you love it, what that's actually going to do is it's going to drive your stress response, which is going to increase your dopamine. So you will absolutely get a dopamine hit, which is what everyone loves from those classes. But it's not going to be the serotonin sort of happy, relaxed, contentment chemical, which we can probably all relate with after we've come out of one of those sweaty sessions. So physical contact is another great tip. So that can be, you know, going with your friends and family, hugs, that lovely sort of bonding time, even giving your dog a hug. So it's been shown that even, you know, cuddling up with pets can help release those happiness chemicals. And then there are certain herbs as well we can look to. So I don't know if you've ever come across saffron, but that comes, so from the crocus plant, saffron comes, and that has been shown to help lift mood, and it helps serotonin stick around in our bodies a little bit longer. And apparently, so the legend holds, the people that work in the crocus fields harvesting all the saffron granules, they are the happiest people you'll ever meet. I've never met them, but I'd like to think it was true.
I love the thought of that. Yeah. True or not, let's just believe that. I really like that.
Yeah. And then the last one, Laura, which you'll also love and be very familiar with, is gratitude and gratitude journaling. So this can be a great way for helping to support serotonin production, but also better even than the journaling is expressing gratitude to others. So what the research shows us is that actually people, that when you receive gratitude from somebody, that gives you the biggest serotonin boost. So next time you're out and you want to give somebody a really heartfelt thank you, you can also be really happy and satisfied in the knowledge that you've given them a massive serotonin boost as well to their day.
And that's obviously what my whole business is based on, so that even better. That's great. I really like what you said about journaling too, and I've been hearing about this a lot recently, and just back from holiday I read a really great book by Dr. Julie Smith. She talks about journaling too, so I definitely think that's something we all need to be doing, even if it's just 5 things a day that you want to write down, or that you're thinking about, or that you want to be thankful for, or just to remind yourself. I think we all need to be doing that too. So yeah, thank you for that. That's really interesting. So there's a lot to kind of take in there. So for somebody who's feeling overwhelmed and thinking, I really need to change parts of my life, I'm not feeling how I should, where would you suggest that they start in terms of boosting their serotonin?
Okay, so first of all, I think it's got to be about putting those raw ingredients in, getting the building blocks there, so where actually our body is going to be able to make these chemicals and these hormones for you. So prioritising getting enough protein, and a lot of people don't get enough, and so we need to be thinking again about that type that I was saying. So things like from the chicken and from the turkey, the fish, the oats and seeds. And just to give you an idea of what that might look like, so for a 65 kilogram woman, she needs to be having about 90 grams of protein a day. So that would be, say, 3 salmon fillets a day. Now, I'm not suggesting that you go out and eat 3 salmon fillets across the day.
That would be expensive too.
Yeah, but it's also just to give you an idea of what that looks like on a plate, and how much it would be. So that's the equivalent amount of that. So thinking about, prioritising protein, making sure that you're getting it sort of breakfast, lunch and dinner across the day, and that we're getting those other nutrients into our diet that we talked about. So the B vitamins, the magnesium, zinc, omega-3, the iron. And really, if you can try and get a closer approach to food and start eating real whole food, so getting back into the kitchen, trying to sort of embrace Hygge that way and cooking a bit more, that's going to be a really, really, really big support to you. And then just from that environmental perspective, thinking about what can you control, how can you start to control your stress, how can you maybe reduce that a bit, is it through the journaling, is it through other things that you can do, slowing down a little bit in life, really sort of thinking, okay, what can I potentially say no to as for a change, rather than yes to everything. Getting outside and exercising, you can do the double whammy. So if you can do your exercise outside in a lovely green space, you're getting your vitamin D, you're in nature, it's going to put
first
everything
thing in the morning as well.
Yeah, and first thing in the morning.
Yeah, then you've ticked all of the boxes.
Yeah,
I love that. I like what you said about, obviously we've been talking a lot about the whole foods, about the natural ingredients, about cooking, but I actually do feel that my most Hygge kind of activity is when I am in my kitchen and I'm cooking and I'm baking and I'm preparing things. So kind of ticks 2 boxes, I suppose, because you're looking after yourself, making sure you're cooking something great for your body, but it's such a Hygge kind of activity to do as well. Probably not everybody feels like that, but I think you should give it a try, because as I say, I love it, taking all of the fresh ingredients and preparing something and then admiring what you've done afterwards. I really like that. So let's talk about genetics. How do our genes play a role in our ability to produce and process serotonin?
Oh, that's an interesting one. Yeah. While we need these various different ingredients that I've been talking about, we still need to process them all in our body. And your genes have a direct influence about how efficiently or not that this happens. So we've all got within our genetic code, within our DNA, we've got little glitches, little variants that in genetics we refer to them as SNPs. And these differences in our genetics and these little SNPs are what make us also wonderfully unique as well. And it's what is going to work. That's why what works for me is probably not going to work for you. And I'm sure you've always had that experience where someone says, oh, you've got to try this. I did this, this and this, and it was amazing. And then you try and you think, well, that didn't work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, what's wrong with me? What have I done wrong? And actually, that's where it's actually all about your genetics, and you can suddenly go, when we do this and we look at with nutrigenomic testing, we look at all these various different pathways in the body, and we can see exactly how you produce dopamine, how you produce serotonin, what your stress response is like, whether you've got more or less resilience, whether you're more sensitive to things like that. And then all these different cofactors. So the things that we look at, and when we do this testing, you can see exactly what different things you might be needing. So we can support it all through food or supplements, and even through lifestyle factors as well are going to influence all of those different pathways. So I always think of it as a lovely way of really giving people that empowerment, because you understand what your own blueprint is, so what your own plan is, how you work. It's a little bit like a permission slip almost for how you feel sometimes, and then you've got that knowledge that helps you to create the best decisions to make the best version of you. Because as I kind of my little sort of saying would be that if you feel good from the inside out, that's when true Hygge is really going to happen.
Yeah, it comes from the inside completely. It really does. So what you've just spoken about that's the nutrigenomics testing.
Yeah, it's a really simple. I work with I use one of the top UK labs, and they just do a very simple cheek swab, which you can do at home, and then you send back in the post, and so you'll get all of these different pathways read. And it's more about testing for things that we can help and support rather than testing for disease processes, if that makes sense. So it's much more of an empowering test, because you kind of get that full picture of, I know I need a little bit more vitamin C here. I know I can't really transport vitamin D. Better think about that and making sure I'm getting enough. I know, for example, I've done my tests, and I've got a few genetic glitches that make me more sensitive to stress on my serotonin levels, for example. So for me, I know that I have to really try and make stress management a priority in my life. Still a work in progress, as always these things are, but at least I'm aware of that now, and it just really helps me understand why, how things can affect me, and so I can mitigate against that and think, okay, right, I've got this coming up, I need to think about X, Y, and Z.
And that's really fascinating that this is something that we can actually find out. Because I had when you mentioned about the I hope I'm saying this correctly, nutrigenomics testing, it's the first time I'd heard that, and I presume, along with a lot of people who are listening, didn't even know, we could do that. So, that's great. And for anybody listening, if you are interested, and I highly recommend it, I'm going to do this too, in exploring nutrigenomics and genetic testing, Tina is offering the podcast listeners 15% off any of her genetics packages using a code, which I will share along with the description and all of the posts and the blog following the podcast. So I would, and I'll share Tina's details too. So absolutely head to her website for more information about that and get in touch with her. So thank you so much for telling us about that. So lastly, Tina, what does Hygge mean to you personally?
Well, for me, it is all about getting outside, getting back into nature. And I always think, gosh, nature has such a wonderful way, doesn't it, of teaching us how to slow down. For me, spending time, I've got a very nice vegetable patch, which is my little sanctuary. So I like to spend time out there, nurturing my plants, enjoying cooking them, getting my hands stuck into the dirt, digging around with them, and then, working in the kitchen together with the family, preparing a lovely meal, spending time together with them. And then equally put me up in my other happy place, which is the mountains, whether that's in the snow or in the summer, walking in the forest with my family. Again, just kind of being in awe of nature, and really helps put things back in perspective and how kind of insignificant we all really are in this incredible world that we live in, really.
Yeah, completely. Sounds of an absolutely for the power of nature. I completely agree with that. So thank you so much, Tina. I myself have got so much from this, really interesting, definitely food for thought, thinking about the way forward, and I'm sure the listeners will too. So again, everybody, I will share Tina's details along with the description in the podcast and all, through all of the links. The podcast will be going on the YouTube channel too, the Hygge at Home YouTube channel, so make sure you have a watch of that. And once again, Tina, thank you so much for joining me. Really enjoyed that.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
soon.